The most dangerous place for a fugitive is the exact spot where the hunter sleeps. I learned that the first night I pressed my face into the soil beneath the alpha's bedroom window. My knees in the wet earth. My hands trembling around a trowel I did not need. His child already moving inside me, small, insistent, alive, while 3 floors above my head, the man who fathered that child dreamed about finding me. He does not know he is dreaming about me. That is the only reason I am still breathing. My name used to mean something. My scent used to carry across a valley like a warning bell. Tonight, I smell like crushed thyme and compost and the bitter green bleed of rue leaves I chew raw until my tongue goes numb. Tonight, I am Elora, the simple maid. The girl with mud under her fingernails. The girl no one looks at twice. That is the disguise. The smell. The stoop in the shoulders. The downcast eyes. The truth is this: I am carrying the alpha's heir. Not a bastard. Not a rumor. A true-born son of the bloodline, conceived on one stolen night 8 months ago, beneath a hunter's moon, in a hunting cabin neither of us was supposed to find. He doesn't remember me the way I remember him. He was drunk on victory and whiskey and the scent of a stranger. I was drunk on a man I was never supposed to touch. When I ran from his father. The old alpha. The one who wants this baby the way a man wants a crown to wear or to break. He has hunters in every province. He has my scent on cloth. He has a standing bounty on any unmated female moving north. So I did the one thing no one expected. I did not go north. I came here, to the estate of the young alpha himself. I begged work in the kitchens. I accepted the worst duties. Gardens. Graves. Boots. Floors. I buried my scent beneath the only masking agents a wolf cannot easily cut through: wet earth, crushed bitterherb, and the clean, scrubbed skin of a woman who works until her hands bleed. And every morning, when he passes me in the corridor, my unborn son goes still, as if he already knows. There are 43 days until this baby is born. 43 days until the first howl rises out of my body and announces to every wolf in this house what I have been hiding beneath their noses. 43 days to survive the only man I have ever wanted. The only man I can never be found by. My name is Elora. This is the story of how I learned to disappear inside a house that would have killed me for breathing, and the night the disappearance ended. Chapter 1: Under the Alpha's Radar. You have to understand the world I was born into. In the packs, scent is everything. Scent is passport, hierarchy, proof of birth, proof of mating, proof of loyalty. A she-wolf's body tells her story before her mouth does. A male can walk into a room and know, inside of 3 breaths, whether the woman in the corner is safe, mated, sick, lying, pregnant, or afraid. That is what I am running from. My own body. Because my body is telling a story no one is supposed to read yet. The estate sits in a ring of black pines 4 valleys deep, cut off from the main road by a private gatehouse and a pair of sentries who rotate at dawn. It is beautiful in the way that powerful things are beautiful: the marble too white, the hedges too perfect, the servants too quiet. Every window watches you back. Every corridor remembers your step. The young alpha is called Cain. That is the name his people speak aloud. The older names, the war names, the blood names are whispered in rooms I am not allowed to enter. He is 32 years old, tall the way a wolf is tall, lean through the hips, broad through the shoulders, with hair the color of wet oak and eyes the color of river stone. He does not smile often. When he does, it is small and slow, and it arrives a full heartbeat after you expect it, as if he has had to decide to release it. I met him once. One night. 8 months ago. A hunting cabin neither of us was supposed to find. I will tell you that story when I can bear to tell it. For now, what you need to know is this. On the morning I arrived at the estate, cloaked in road dirt and a false name, a housekeeper named Mareth looked me up and down and said, "You'll do the gardens." I almost wept with relief. The gardens were the one place in the house where my scent would not damn me. The gardens had a scent of their own older than any wolf in the estate, thick with mulch and jasmine and the bitter root of yarrow. A scent I could sink into. A scent I could wear like a second skin. The gardens gave me 43 days. The gardens are why you're hearing this story at all. My first week, I barely slept. My body was 28 weeks along and already betraying me, the small pouch under the coarse apron, the way my breath would not deepen past a certain point, the way I had to brace a hand on the stone wall to rise from a crouch. I bound my belly tighter. I moved slower. I let my hair fall in my face. I watched him only through windows. The first time was accidental. I was kneeling in the lavender bed beneath the east terrace, my trowel in my hand, when I heard boots on marble above me. I did not look up. You do not look up at the alpha. You become a stone. You become a shrub. You become a thing that does not need to be noticed. But I heard him stop. I heard him stop directly above me. And I felt, I swear to you, I felt, the exact moment his attention passed over the back of my neck like a warm hand. Not recognition. Not yet. Something quieter than that. Curiosity. The way a wolf's head will lift when a wind changes direction and carries a note he almost knows. My baby moved. A hard, sharp turn, low in my belly. I did not breathe until his boots moved on. That night, in the servants' dormitory, I pressed my forehead to the cold window glass and told my son, without speaking, not yet. Please. Not yet. And I felt him settle, the way a puppy settles against a warm flank, trusting me to keep the shape of us both together for one more day. The gardens held. The gardens would hold for 30 more days. After that, I did not yet know. Chapter 2. The Art of Disappearance. If you want to hide a body, put it to work. That is the rule I invented in the first month. Every morning at 4:30, I was out the kitchen door with a basket of rags and a tin of black soap. Marble Hall's East Wing. The long gallery with the ancestor portraits. The antler room, which smelled of old bone and men's pipe smoke. The stair landings 1 through 4. By 7, I had to be in the garden, gloves on, braid down, apron tied beneath my breasts so the thickening there would read as a working woman's waist and not the truth. It was not clever. It was not strategic. It was survival by labor, and labor explains almost everything the body does. Why was my back aching? Because I had scrubbed 40 yards of stone. Why were my ankles swollen? Because I had stood for 10 hours. Why did I breathe heavy on the stairs? Because I was a kitchen girl built for plowing, not climbing. Every ache had a cover story. Every swollen thing had a reason. The grease of labor on my skin dulled the scent of pregnancy beneath it. The soap I used in the marble halls had a sharp light cut that lingered in my hair. The bitterherb I chewed turned my sweat into something that read, to a passing wolf's nose, like any tired servant at the end of a shift. And the garden wrote the rest of me. Damp soil under my nails. Crushed rosemary on my wrists. Jasmine oil I pressed into the hollow of my throat every time I passed beneath a window where he might be standing. Still, the disappearance cost. You cannot scrub a floor beneath a man you have loved without something inside you coming loose. The worst days were the ones when he used the east wing. I would be on my knees, bucket beside me, a lock of hair fallen into my eyes, when the double doors would open at the far end of the corridor and his voice would enter the room before his body did. Low. Unhurried. Speaking to a steward, an advisor, a brother. My body would recognize him before my mind did. A deep, low tightening under the breastbone. A heat at the back of my neck, as if a hand had been placed there. The baby, kicking once, a single, hard kick, as if to say, him, him, him. I would bow my head lower. I would scrub harder. I would let my hair curtain my face, and I would count the beats of his boots on the stone. 12 paces. 11. 10. Sometimes he passed without slowing. Sometimes he did not. The third week, he stopped. I had not heard him approach. The steward he had been speaking with must have turned off down another corridor, because suddenly there was only one pair of boots in the hall, and they were close, and they were slowing, and they were stopping 3 feet from the edge of my rag. I did not look up. I could not have looked up if my life depended on it, and it did. I felt him standing there. I felt him breathing. Not hurried. Not suspicious. Just standing. The way a man stands when he is trying to remember something. The way a wolf stands when the wind has carried him a note he almost knows. "Girl," he said. His voice was quieter than I had braced for. "What is your name?" "Elora, my lord." I said it to the marble. I said it to his boots. I did not raise my eyes. "Elora," he repeated, as if tasting it, as if weighing whether the word sat correctly on his tongue. A long silence. My pulse hammering in my throat. My son, impossibly, still, as if he, too, were holding his breath. "You've been here how long, Elora?" 3 weeks this Sunday, my lord." Another silence. I could smell him now, though I had been trying so hard not to. Cedar. Cold iron. Something beneath, a hot, low note that was entirely him. A note my body had not forgotten. A note that curled into my lungs and made me ache in places I had spent a month teaching myself not to feel. "You smell like my mother's garden," he said. Not a compliment. Not a question. A thing observed. "I work in the gardens, my lord." He did not move for another beat. Then I heard him say, almost to himself, "Odd." And he walked on. My hands were shaking so badly I could not hold the rag. I pressed my forehead to the cold marble and I waited until the doors at the far end of the hall closed behind him before I allowed myself to breathe, and even then the breath came out in a thin, ragged line, barely a breath at all. That night I added crushed rue to the jasmine oil. It stung my skin. It blistered the hollow of my throat. I wore it anyway. Because odd is what a wolf says when he is beginning to notice something he should not be noticing. And if I gave him one more odd, one more pull, one more note out of place, he would follow that thread, and the thread would lead to me, and the thread would lead to his son. I had to be more ordinary than the mulch in the hedges. I had to be less than a shadow. I had 22 days left. Chapter 3. A Fragile Masquerade. Here is what no one tells you about hiding from a man you love. The longer you hide from him, the more you start to crave the thing you are afraid of. It is not a choice. It is biology. It is the old, stupid wiring of a she-wolf who has carried a pup of a man's blood inside her body for 32 weeks. Every day my son grew. The bond grew with him, a thin, humming wire strung between my chest and wherever Cain happened to be standing in the estate. I could feel him the way you feel weather. I could feel him cross the courtyard. I could feel him go into the library. I could feel him sleep. And I could feel him begin, slowly, impossibly, to look for me. It was not a hunt. Not yet. He did not know what he was doing. But a wolf does not need to know he is tracking to track. He started walking through the East Gallery when he did not need to. He started taking his morning coffee on the terrace above the lavender beds. Twice I looked up through the jasmine arbor and found him leaning on the balustrade above me, arms folded, watching the garden the way a man watches a sea he used to swim in. He never called me up. He never spoke to me again in the halls. But he stood where he could see me, and my body answered every time. The 4th week, he brought me water. It was a Tuesday. It was the hottest Tuesday of the summer. I was weeding the low bed beside the kitchen wall, the one that ran along the foundation stones where the earth stayed cool, and I had not stood up in nearly an hour because standing was hard, and sitting was hard. And every position was a negotiation between my back and my son and the lie I was wearing on top of both of them. I heard boots on the gravel path. I did not look up. I never looked up. A shadow crossed my hands. A shadow the shape of a man. "Drink," he said. I raised my face before I could stop myself. I did not mean to. I had not looked him in the eye in 31 days. I had spent every waking minute of 31 days training my eyes to the ground, my chin to my chest, my whole self into a small, invisible, uninteresting thing. And then he said drink in that low, unhurried voice, and my chin came up as if he had called my name. He was holding out a cup of water. A silver cup. From the house. From his own kitchen. Beaded with cold. His eyes went still. Just for a second. Just long enough for me to see the flicker of something cross his face, something that was not quite recognition, and not quite confusion, and not quite desire, but stood at the crossroads of all three, looking at me as if trying to remember a dream he had once had at a hunting cabin, beneath a hunter's moon, 8 months and a lifetime ago. He did not remember. But something inside him was trying to. "Thank you, my lord," I whispered, and I took the cup with both hands so he would not see how one of mine was shaking. Our fingers touched. It was nothing. A brush. The kind of contact a stranger does not register. But I felt it, the way you feel a bell struck in a cathedral, from my knuckles all the way down into the cradle of my pelvis, where my son startled awake and kicked, hard, once, against the inside of my ribs. I kept my face down. I drank the water. I said thank you again. Cain did not move. He stood over me on that gravel path for what felt like a full minute. I could hear him breathing. I could smell him. I could feel his attention on the crown of my head like a warm hand someone had forgotten to lift. Then, very quietly, almost to the wall behind me, he said, "Have we met before, Elora?" The world stopped. My son went still. Every crow in every tree on the estate seemed to stop mid-call. I counted to 3 inside my mouth. I counted to 4. I made my voice as dull and as tired and as ordinary as any garden girl's voice had ever been. "I would remember, my lord," I said. "Yes," he said. "You would." And then, mercifully, a steward called his name from the terrace, and he was gone, and I set the silver cup carefully beside my knee in the dirt, and I put both my hands flat over my belly, and I told my son, silently, "Hold on, hold on. Hold on, we are nearly there." That was the 4th week. In the 5th week, everything tightened. He did not speak to me again. Not once. But I felt his attention the way a deer feels a hunter in a tree line. His eyes would find me in the kitchen courtyard when I carried laundry to the line. His eyes would find me across the long dining hall when I polished the brass. Once, at dusk, I came around a corner of the rose arbor and found him already standing there, hands in his pockets, as if he had been waiting for nothing in particular to walk by. He stepped aside to let me pass. His shoulder brushed the shoulder of my dress. And I nearly, God help me, I nearly turned my face into the column of his throat and pressed my open mouth there, the way a mated she-wolf presses into the scent gland of her male, because for a single, suicidal second, my body had forgotten that I was hiding and had remembered only that I was his. I kept walking. I did not look back. That night, in the dormitory, I wept so quietly that the maid in the next cot did not stir. I wept not because I was afraid, though I was, and not because I was tired, though I was, but because I had learned a terrible thing. I had learned that the man I was hiding from was also the only man my body would ever be at home with. And I was going to have to lie to him until the day his own son called out from my body in a voice no disguise could cover. 16 days. 16 days left. Chapter 4, The Breaking Point. The ceremony came on a Thursday. I did not know it was coming until I heard the kitchens talking. Every 7 years, the great packs of the northern reaches send representatives to the young alpha's estate for a binding, a night of oaths, a night of scent-sharing, a night when every wolf in the great hall stands shoulder to shoulder and breathes each other in like brothers. It is a test. It is a ritual. It is a census. And every scent in the house, from the steward to the stable boy to the least kitchen girl, must pass through the great hall at least once, so that the visiting alphas can account for every soul under Cain's roof. Every soul, including the gardener. I was 34 weeks along. I was 34 weeks along, and I was going to have to walk, upright, through a room of 200 wolves with a nose each, carrying a child whose blood any one of them could recognize the instant my scent slipped. I cannot describe what that week felt like. I can tell you that I did not sleep. I can tell you that I stopped eating the rich food in the kitchen and lived on bitterherb and cold broth, trying to thin the scent of my body down to the bone. I can tell you that I slept in the garden shed on the last 3 nights, wrapped in the canvas sacks we used for mulch, because even the dormitory smelled too much like women, and I needed to smell like dirt and only dirt. I can tell you that I braided crushed rue into the hair at the nape of my neck until the skin there blistered into a thin, weeping line, because the rue burned the scent out of sweat, and I could not afford to sweat. I can tell you that my son, as if sensing what was coming, went quiet. Strangely, beautifully quiet. As if he, too, were holding a breath he was not ready to release. The night of the ceremony, I bound my belly so tightly I could barely stand. I put on the servant's gray long sleeves, high collar, apron over apron. I rubbed garden soil into the crooks of my elbows, behind my knees, into my hairline. I chewed bitterherb until my mouth filled with saliva and spat it into the hollow of my throat. And then I walked, on legs that did not want to walk, from the servant's door, along the back passage and into the great hall. The hall was full. 200 wolves. Candles and iron. The high tables set with silver. The smell of them, God, the smell of them, so many scents layered on top of each other that for one glorious, dizzy moment I thought, he'll never find me in this. I am one voice in a choir. I am one tree in a forest. And then I saw him. Cain stood at the head of the hall, in a coat the color of wet slate, his sleeves rolled to the elbow in the old custom, his throat bare. His eyes moved across the room the way a lighthouse moves across a sea, slow, deliberate, finding nothing, finding nothing, finding nothing, and then they found the doorway where I had just entered. And they stopped. Across 200 wolves. Across a hall hot with candles and breath and oaths. His eyes stopped on me. I felt it land. I felt my knees nearly give. He did not move toward me. He did not even change his expression. But his body, across that hall, oriented. The way a compass orients. The way an animal orients. And every wolf in that room who was trained to read a room, which is every wolf in that room, felt it. I lowered my head. I tucked myself against the servants' wall. I moved, slowly, along the edge of the crowd, carrying nothing in my hands, pretending to be nothing but a girl assigned to refill a pitcher. I had to pass within 6 feet of him to reach the side door. I counted the steps. 15. 14. 13. A senior alpha from the northern reach, a heavy man with a scarred jaw, stepped into my path. Not to stop me, he did not even see me, but to speak to Cain. He stood between us. His broad back blocked me from Cain's line of sight. I took it. God forgive me, I took the shield of that stranger's body, and I moved past the high table with my face turned to the wall, and for 1 second, one single second, I was 3 feet from Cain, shoulder to shoulder with the senior alpha, and my baby, who had been so quiet all week, moved. Not a kick. A turn. A long, slow turn, the way a child turns toward a familiar voice in the next room. I felt it. Cain felt it. I know he felt it because I heard his breath change. I heard him stop mid-sentence. I heard the senior alpha say, "My lord." And I heard Cain, after a long, terrible pause, say quietly, "Forgive me." Go on. I made the side door. I made the corridor. I made the garden. I made the far wall of the kitchen herb bed before my legs gave out, and I sat down in the dirt in my servant's gray, and I put my forehead against the stone, and I could not cry because my body had nothing left to cry with. He had felt it. He had felt his son turn inside me across a hall of 200 wolves, and though he did not yet understand what he had felt it, and his face had changed, and some part of him, the part older than his mind, the part that belonged to the animal, had known. The disguise was over. It had not fallen yet, but it was over. I had days, maybe hours. I lay back in the dirt, in the dark, among the herbs I had used to hide myself, and I put my hands on my belly, and I said to my son, aloud this time, "I have done everything I can. From here, we are in your hands." And my son moved one small, sure turn, low in my body as if to answer. Chapter 5, The First Howl. He came for me at dawn. Not as a hunter. Not with men at his back. He came alone, in the same slate coat, his sleeves still rolled, his eyes hollow with a sleeplessness I recognized because it matched mine. He found me where I had fallen asleep, in the kitchen herb bed, curled on my side in the dirt, the binding around my belly loosened in the night because my body had refused to be bound a second longer. I woke to his shadow. I woke to his voice, quieter than I had ever heard it, saying only my name. Elora. I did not sit up. I could not. The binding was loose. The apron had shifted. The morning light was cold and pitiless, and there was no soil in the world deep enough to hide what I was anymore. He knelt in the dirt. In the dirt. In his slate coat. He knelt. And he looked at me, at my face, at my hair, at my mouth, at the pouch of my belly beneath the loosened apron, and his face did something I will carry with me until the day I die. It broke. Not in anger. Not in rage. Not in the way the old Alpha, his father, would have broken. His face broke the way a man's face breaks when he has spent 8 months with a hollow place inside his chest and has just, in one heartbeat, understood what used to live there. It was you, he said. His voice was not a question. I could not speak. The cabin, he said. The hunter's moon. The woman who was gone before I woke. I closed my eyes. Look at me, Elora. I opened them. You ran, he said. From your father, I said. My voice was a thread. My voice was a cobweb. Not from you. Never from you. From your father. Something behind his eyes, the thing that had been hollow filled. He wants the child, I whispered. He will not have the child. He has hunters in every province. He will not have the child. He said it a second time. It was not a reassurance. It was a law. He said it the way a man says a thing that is already true, that has been true for the entire 8 months he was living without knowing why he could not sleep, why he could not rest, why his chest ached in the East Gallery and in the lavender beds and above the jasmine arbor and on the gravel path beside the kitchen wall. He had been looking for me. He had been looking for me since the morning I left the cabin, and he had not known it, and his body had known it, and his body had walked him past my garden every morning for 8 weeks, because his body was a wolf and his body never forgot. He reached out. Slowly. The way you reach for something you are afraid will vanish. He laid his hand, palm flat, on the curve of my belly, over the loosened apron, over the thin gray cloth, over our son. And our son, who had been quiet for a week, who had been holding his breath the way I had been holding mine, our son pushed back. A hard, sure shove. A whole foot, I think. Right against his father's hand. Cain made a sound. I will not try to describe it. I could not do it justice. It was not a word. It was something between a laugh and a sob, and it left his mouth before he could catch it, and his other hand came up and cradled my face, and he bent his forehead to mine in the dirt of the herb bed, and he said, into the space between us, "You have been here. The whole time. You have been here." I had to hide him, I whispered. I had to hide him somewhere your father would never look. I knew your father would look everywhere, except the one place the heir's own blood was already sleeping. I had to, Cain, I had to. Shoo. I know I should have. Shoo, shoo. You did right. You did right. You did everything right. You brought him home. And then, because neither of us could bear the weight of any more words, he simply gathered me into his arms, coat and dirt and apron and all, and carried me out of the herb bed, out of the kitchen yard, across the gravel path, up the marble stairs I had scrubbed on my knees for 8 weeks, through the East Gallery where he had once stopped beside me and asked my name, and into the house as what I had always been and never been allowed to be. 6 days later, in the hour before dawn, in a bed that smelled of cedar and cold iron and a note beneath that was entirely him, our son was born. He did not cry at first. He drew one breath. He drew a second. And then, small and clear and impossible, from the cradle of his father's hands, he howled. One clean note. A son's note. A pack note. It rang through the house. It rang through the valleys. It rang, I am told, all the way to the northern reach, where the old Alpha, his grandfather, woke in his bed with the sound of a voice he had been hunting for 8 months ringing inside his own skull, and understood, at last, that he had lost. The heir had been claimed. The heir had been howled. The heir belonged, now and forever, to the man whose hand had been the first to hold him, and to the woman who had buried her own name in a garden to keep him alive. That was the first howl. That was the end of the hiding. I am not a gardener anymore. I still walk the bed sometimes, in the cool hour before dusk, with my son on my hip and my husband at my shoulder. The jasmine still climbs the arbor. The lavender still holds the heat of the day. The herb bed where I slept on the last night of my disappearance is marked now with a single flat stone, not a grave, but a place. A reminder. A line I crossed. The old Alpha, his father, is a story I will tell another night. He did not take this house. He did not take this child. He learned, as old wolves sometimes learn, that a woman who will bury herself in dirt for 8 months to keep a child breathing is not a woman any man outlives. But that is another story for another evening. For tonight, for this story, I want you to remember only one thing. The deepest disguise is not a changed face. It is not a changed name. It is not herbs in your hair or soil under your nails. The deepest disguise is the refusal to be seen by the one person whose seeing you would save. I hid from him for 8 months. He found me in 6 seconds, the moment I let him. If this story moved you, if you felt your own breath catch when his shadow fell across my hands on that gravel path, if you felt your own chest tighten when our sun turned in that great hall, if you leaned forward even once in the last 45 minutes, do me one small kindness. Tap that like button. It is the closest thing a quiet story has to a howl of its own. It tells the algorithm that stories like this one deserve to find the next woman who needs to hear them. And then tell me, down in the comments, when was the moment you knew he knew? Was it the silver cup? Was it the brush of shoulders in the rose arbor? Was it the senior alpha stepping between us in the great hall? I read every comment, and I promise you I will read yours. A story is not finished until it is shared, and yours will shape the next one I tell. And if there is a woman in your life, a sister, a friend, a daughter, a mother, who has ever had to shrink herself small to survive somewhere she did not belong, share this story with her. Send it quietly. She will know why. Stay close. I have more stories where this one came from. There are more gardens. There are more disguises. There are more women learning, in the dark, that the thing they were running from was also the thing that was running toward them. Until the next one, sleep well, my friend. And when you dream tonight, dream of gardens.